Got it. And we are live on YouTube and we are recording.
Okay, great.
You're good. You can start.
Okay, well, once again, thank you all for inviting us to speak with the Kappa Leaguers today. As you heard, my name is Dr. Monica Cummings Crusoe, and I have with me today our panelists. I'm not sure if they're spotlighted just yet. I have with me my silhouette from the New Rochelle White Plains chapter, Dr. Isano Fergus Rowe. She can give a wave so you can see her. And then I have my sister president from the Hartford chapter in Hartford, Connecticut, Leslie Mays Lowe. And if she can give a wave to let you know where she is. There she is. And so we're going to begin. We had the pleasure of having last week or so our silhouettes and some of our friends from Jack and Jill who came aboard and shared some of the information that we have with you today. And so I'm going to ask today if we start off with just a little bit of, we're going to just do some rounds and have some questions. We're looking for you to ask us questions towards the end about the things that we do. So I'm going to start first off with my silhouette, Isano Fergus Rowe. If you could just pop on and introduce yourself and tell the Kappa Leaguers what you do for a living. And the same question will apply to our silhouette, Leslie Mays Lowe.
So thank you so much, President Monica. It's a pleasure for me being here today with the honor of speaking to the Kappa Leaguers. And so just to introduce myself, I'm also a silhouette. I actually serve as secretary for our chapter. I'm also a wife of a Kappa, obviously, and a mother of a Kappa Leaguer, both named Robert Rowe, RJ and Robert Rowe. So I was invited to talk about, what I do as a living. So what do I do? I'm a doctor. I'm a specialist in the heart. So I'm a cardiologist. I'm also a teacher. So I'm an associate professor of medicine. So I teach students from college, medical school, residency, and doctors in training who are training to be specialists. So that's what I do for a living. And I also, do a couple of programs in communities and speaking in the community. So maybe I'll get a chance to talk about that a little bit later. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Dr. Rowe. We're going to move to our silhouette, Leslie Mays Lowe.
Hi, everybody. I'm Leslie Mays Lowe. I'm on television as Leslie Mays. My husband is Dr. Kerwin Lowe, who's the pole mark of the Hartford Alumni Kappa chapter. I am a television journalist. I work for the NBC-owned station here in Connecticut, WVIT. We're known as NBC Connecticut. I've been here for about 7 years now, and I'm a general assignment reporter, and I also anchor the news and various newscasts throughout the day. And I'm the host of a show that I created called Connecticut in Color that aims to highlight Connecticut's communities of color and issues that impact us as Black people, but also all people of color throughout the state, trying to give representation to voices that are often not heard and stories that would otherwise go untold. I'm a lifelong journalist, even though I've been only working about 15 years now. I love talking to people and connecting. And I think that journalism is one of the greatest jobs in the world because you do something new every day, you meet new people every day, and you get to share people's stories.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you. And I didn't get a chance to introduce myself, so I'm going to do it here. Once again, my name is Dr. Monica Cummings Crusoe, and I am a special educator at heart. But my work extends a little bit more than that. I am currently the culturally responsive sustaining educator for the New York City Department of Education. I also am the founder and CEO of a nonprofit organization called the Eye Care Projects, which also does missionary work out in the countries of Africa, Kenya, and working towards Ghana. We do eye care screenings. We do feminine hygiene cares for women. And we also do a feeding program in which we try to supply sustaining economic goods for a community. One main school that we're working with right now is called the Lehi School in Ethiopia in Addis Ababa. And the grades there run from K to 8. And with the pandemic, we haven't been out there. So we've been home and trying to do that same work from here, which is very, very hard. So with Leslie and Icy, both of the work that they do really has an impact on the work that I do. We do need to continue to report on families and communities of color here and in the diaspora over into Africa, and we're making sure that they are in good health and standing. So I'm going to ask the panelists another question. What made you choose your career? When did you know this career was for you? So we're going to start backwards this time. We're going to start with Leslie, and then we're going to go to Silhouette Icy.
So I have always, maybe I shouldn't say this as we speak to children, but I was always the kid in class who talked too much and, had questions and, a challenge for my teachers. I was always very curious and, wanted the answers to things, wanted to find out stuff, was always willing to raise my hand in addition to talking in class, was always raising my hand and trying to participate. And so I grew up, the only babysitter that I ever had in my childhood was my father's mother, my grandmother. She lived right across the street. And every day at 4:00, we were turning to ABC to watch Oprah, like without fail, no matter what, had to watch Oprah. And she, people know her obviously as a talk show host and now as a media titan, but she began as a local news journalist and told stories locally in a number of different cities, Baltimore, I think she was somewhere out in Tennessee, like where she's from, or Mississippi, somewhere in the South. And then also obviously in Chicago, where she got her biggest break. But finding out that Oprah was a journalist and then looking at other women who I watched on television who told stories and did the very things that I felt just came to me naturally, I always knew that it was something that I wanted to do. And so I grew up in Washington, D.C. And when I was in high school, the DC public schools had a student-run television station. So I went to a high school that required us to have internships. And so logically, my internship was at this television station. And I got a chance to actually be on air as one of the hosts of a couple of different shows that they had. And I said, oh, this is for me. And I knew I wanted to do television specifically because of the immediacy of it. Obviously, when I was coming out of high school and college, the web existed, but was not what it is now. And so the ability to get news out quickly, the fastest way at that time, and I think still today, is television, to marry words and information with pictures and, being able to be live and go right into people's homes was the reason I knew I wanted to do television. And it's been a great ride ever since. I've worked in DC on Capitol Hill. I've worked in Charlotte, North Carolina. I worked in New York City for a while behind the scenes. I started out behind the camera, and then I've been here in Connecticut for the last 7 years.
Thank you, Leslie. And so, Silhouette Icy, do you see a connection with that journey that Leslie just spoke about?
Oh, absolutely. I was also a very curious child from day one. I was always asking questions. I wanted to know how things worked. Specifically, I wanted to know how bodies worked and how animals worked. And I remember as a child, my uncle told me, you're a very morbid child, because he had some fish, okay? And he was trying to scale the fish and clean it up because he was a fisherman. And I was all in it. I'm like, what's in there? And how does that work? And how does that connect? And so I was always very curious. My dolls were always lined up, trying to, pretend they were in a hospital. But it became very real for me. A couple of reasons why I actually ended up on this particular journey. My aunt, my paternal aunt, was actually born with when you're born with a defect, it's called congenital. And so her heart was very slow. A normal heart beats between 60 to 70 beats per minute. And hers was beating very slow. And when your heart's beating very slow, you really can't work. You can't do things. You're tired. Well, when I was in college, she passed away waiting for a pacemaker. So that was one thing that I said, I'm going to do what I can to really figure out, what's going on with people so they could be better. But the other thing was, Monica, I went to school at Columbia University, and I was working in a lab for what do you call, just to make some money. And I was working right next to a dog lab where they were doing research. Now, I love pets. Remember, I love animals. And they were actually giving the dogs heart attacks. And the reason they were giving the dogs heart attacks was to figure out how to fix it for people. What do you do for a person? And, you give them a device. So that was another thing that really made me want to jump on this career path. So I did some research for a while because I thought maybe I wanted to do like a PhD. And then I realized I wanted to be around people. So I became a medical doctor. And I went to school at SUNY downstate after college at Columbia. And, so you have the choice of figuring out what kind of doctor you want to be, right? You could be a generalist, a pediatrician, or you could be a specialist. So you get to actually rotate through all the different disciplines. And one day I met this man, and he was just so brilliant and amazing and smart. And I'm like, I want to be just like him. He became my mentor, and he's still my mentor. And he was a cardiologist. And I said, that's what I want to be. So I got inspired by my mentor to be on that pathway to be a cardiologist. But I recognized that besides taking care of people, I wanted to teach. And when I met my mentor, Dr. Clark, he was a teacher. When you're in an academic setting, you don't just have to take care of people, you teach as well. And then you also get an opportunity not just to teach people who are trying to be doctors, but also the community at large, like the people who can get sick. And from that time frame, I realized that I could be a doctor and take care of people, but I can also teach, and I can also speak, and I can also be a business person, and had an opportunity to speak on TV and radio and everything like that. So I was like, this is the career that I would like to choose because there's so much flexibility. But along the way, I can also help people, not just in my office, giving them a needle or doing a procedure, but before it gets to that. So that's how I ended up where I am now at Mount Sinai, New York City.
Thank you both. It sounds like, with in fact, all three of us, there is that within leadership, there has to be some bound of curiosity, right? And so all three of us were curious about something that made us move into that particular. For me, it was, what do you mean someone can't learn? And I didn't understand that. I didn't understand that it was different for people who they said had a different IQ level or a different ability. And so I wanted to make sure that that wasn't something that effectively happened in our communities. So I went to school, started off as a teacher's aide, and became now a culturally responsive educator. And I'm still struggling with that curiosity. What do you mean that can't happen for someone? So special education is at the core of everything I do within my ministry. What do you mean people can't get vision screenings? What do you mean girls can't come to school? What do you mean? And all of that is all my curiosity. And I channeled that into the form of the leadership of moving things forward for some women. I'm going to ask you about your education. Dr. Fergus Rowe, what type of education prepared you for doing what you do, especially going into the hearts from a fish to the human body? I think that's a little bit more than playing with little plastic knives outside on the lawn. So help us out with that.
Okay. So first, let me just say, it seems like a very, very long road to becoming a cardiologist. And I know a lot of kids are like, I don't want to be in school that long. Yeah. But guess what? You actually get paid while you're getting trained. So let me just go through that first. So yeah, of course, college, nobody gets paid in college. So you do 4 years of college. And during the college, you're being prepared for any realm that you may want to end up taking when you become a doctor. So you obviously do the sciences, but you get to also choose other things. So I chose to do things like psychology and sociology and even economics, because I want to understand, which population I'm going to take care of and what makes certain people have certain, disease processes. So you have to take like sciences, and you take some of those, humanitarian type courses, but they also, the one thing I think a lot of people find daunting is that you take calculus. A lot of people don't like calculus, but it's a very rational subject that, allows you to think, and you actually use it later on because you have to be very rational about figuring out prescriptions and things like that and understanding medicine. So you take all those in college, right? The sciences, calculus, and then you could do some other courses that you like. Like I did languages. And so I'm fluent in French and Spanish. And that helped me later on to greet my patients, because I know when you speak to someone in their language and their culture, they resonate better with you. So and a lot of my patients, I'm like one of the few doctors who can speak Spanish. So I get a lot of Spanish patients. So that's what I did in college. So after college is medical school. And that's where you take the skills and hone them in. So the first 2 years of medical school, you're really like learning all about the drugs and the treatments, right? Pharmacology. You learn about the anatomy. You learn about people's bodies. So that's one of the most gruesome things that people have to go through is learning bodies. So you learn about 50 different to 100 different bodies, because guess what? We all look different on the outside, but when you take, this is getting a little gruesome, but you basically take the skin off, or they give you a body without skin. Everybody has the same muscles, the same bones, nerves, and it may be in a slightly different place. So you got to find the same things on every person's body. And that's called gross anatomy, maybe because it's gross, but it also means being physical. So once you've done that, if you can get to gross anatomy, you could get through anything, right? So the first 2 years is like, kind of figuring out, are you going to make it through by looking at these bodies and honing down on all the drugs and the treatments. And then the second 2 years of medical school, you're beginning clinical. So you begin to figure out where you want to be. Do you want to be a dermatologist and have a spa and do cosmetics? Do you want to be a surgeon because you're really detailed, or do you want to do pediatrics or neurology, psychiatry? That's when you figure out where do you want to go, and you get to meet people. You go through working in the emergency room, going to surgery, you go through all the disciplines. I'll tell you that I was at crossroads when I went into the emergency room the first time, because I had, my first patient was a guy who was riding his bike across the Brooklyn Bridge and collided with a car and fell down. And so I had to clean his face. And I said, if I make it through this, I'm going to be a doctor. If I don't make it through this, forget about it. I'm going to do something else. So I got through that. And so that was it. So you do college, and then you do medical school. And then after that is the training, right? Because you want your doctor to kind of know what they're doing instead of prescribing you and giving you wrong procedures or whatever. So that's when you start out with your training and residency. So you start out as an intern and then a resident. And then you could become a chief resident, which I was, and then you could go on to specialty training. So the good news is you're still training, but you start making a salary. And your salary is probably average to above average anyway than most people while you're training. And the good news is that you have someone who's overseeing you. So you're not responsible for any mistakes or whatever. So that's where you gain your confidence with speaking and getting to really know what you're doing. At that point, when you're finished with your residency, you can stop then. You're an attending cardiologist. But if you want to go on to do specialty in whatever you want to do, then you can continue, and you're called a PGY, whatever, postgraduate year. But then if you want to go on to be a specialist, then you're very more narrowly focused on a particular area versus a generalist. But again, you are getting paid, and the pay scale goes up each time. So I know some of the kids are like, we're not going to school for 12 years or whatever, but really it's college, medical school training, and you get paid from training all the way through. Then when you become an attending, you decide you're going to stop and you're going to work, then you're done. And then you really can begin to see the true fruits of your labor. And you can basically with the degree, you can do anything. You can work for medicine, you can work for businesses, you can work for pharmaceuticals, you could run a business, you could have your own medical practice, or you could work in an academic center and continue to teach people if that's what you choose to do.
Thank you, Silhouette Icy. I heard from you that there was a lot of confidence that you needed to gain, and your mentors helped you do that. So I'm going to ask Silhouette Leslie if she could share what type of education or preparation did it require for you to get where you are, and did you also need that confidence, or did you get mentors along the way?
So I think I have the exact opposite educational experience in Dr. Rowe, and that all I have is a 4-year bachelor's degree, but I have a job that is one that you can't actually learn through training. And so I always tell people when I meet folks who want to become journalists that, you know, you just got to go and do the job. So you absolutely should go to and complete college and master's degrees should you so choose, but it's one of those jobs where you learn it from doing it. So there's no class that I can take that could, in the way that I could learn to be prepared for surgery and cleaning off that person's face who was hit by the car. There's no class to take to prepare you for presenting the news of that accident on television. You just kind of, it's trial and error. You do it, you build your confidence over time. You learn how to tell a big story in television in a very short amount of time, 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. And so I have a 4-year bachelor's degree from St. John's University. My degree is in government and politics, political science. I always knew that I wanted to be a reporter. So I've been interning since, as I mentioned, I was in high school in different places. And that was the most important part, in addition to my actual degree, of my training to become a journalist, was working in different places. So when I was in high school, I interned at Sirius XM Radio at the time. I interned at CNN. I got an internship at New York One, which is where I started my career when I was in college, and then directly out of school. And I learned all kinds of different things from just being in different newsrooms, being sent to different stories. There were days when I would see all 5 boroughs in one shift, going to a murder over here, a parade over here, a ribbon cutting over here, some kind of political press conference over here. And next thing you know, it's like, wow, I've done a lot in 8 hours. And then I moved to Charlotte, and it was a different kind of news, because it's not the same as a place like New York. It's a different kind of news. And that confidence was something that I think my journey in moving to all of these different places and doing my job and having it be so public, and that, I'm on television and I can't make mistakes because people can see me all over, and it's on the web and all that. It's something that came with time, but I think looking to people who have the career, had the roles that I wanted and the things that I still aspire to, those have been kind of my virtual mentors, if you will. I guess I'm lucky that I can turn on the TV and see the people who have the job that I want, and live stream news stations across the country and learn from people and understand how they present, how they tell stories, the perspectives and the approaches that they bring to journalism. I will say this, you mentioned that you speak a number of different languages, and that is something that I think is useful for anyone. And I know that journalists who speak other languages, they often get preferences on jobs, because it's like, hey, you get somewhere where people only speak Spanish, you're the one who can communicate and get the story in ways that other folks can't. And that is a skill that will benefit you no matter what career you choose. So I think that pursuing knowledge, a basic conversational ability in other languages, critically important. And I think also, even though it sounds, you talk about being a doctor or doing these other things, like school sounds long, but it is so much easier to just get it done early and, pursue the things that you have an interest in, because you can never have too much education, but you absolutely can have not enough, and find that there are roles that you want, and you can't get them because you don't have the proper schooling. So for me, it is just a bachelor's degree, but it wouldn't hurt if I had a law degree. It's something I still think about a lot. There are a lot of journalists who have degrees in law or finance backgrounds, and they're able to report for CNBC and talk about the economy, explain this whole notion of inflation that we've been talking about, for the last few months now, and make it something that everybody can understand. So I would say to the young folks listening, whatever you're thinking about, if there's like a degree that you can get for it, go and pursue that.
Yeah, I wonder sometimes, the two of you, when you think about doing the work that you do, what was it like at home doing all that studying and trying to prepare? When Leslie, you're talking about staying at home with grandma, watching Oprah all the time, is she one person that you would love to have had a conversation with as a mentor?
Oh, without a doubt, because Oprah has been able to turn the local news and the ability to connect with people into programming that has affected the lives of people around the world, not just women, not just Black people, but all kinds of individuals can look to her. When it was, back in the day when it was Live Your Best Life, and that notion of inspiring people on television. And now, she's got her talk shows, reality programming, scripted shows. Oprah absolutely would be an example in terms of how to diversify and taking a single position and turning it into something that has an impact on quite literally millions of people.
So I'm going to ask you both now, right? So what is the most people think of leadership as only being in charge of others, but we know that leadership is much broader than that, right? So what type of leadership skills did it require for you to get to where you are right now?
I'll let the doctor go first.
You can go first.
Who's going first, me? Or you gonna go?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Hi. So first, let me just say, the way I look at it is that anyone can be a leader. Anyone can be a leader. You have to apply yourself. You have to try and develop that self-confidence and just be able to administer. So I think it's a natural tendency for people to think that they're not good enough or not worthy enough to be a leader, but you are. Everyone can be. And this is the way I look at it. If you look at all the leaders right now, whether it's President Biden, whether it's Oprah, whatever, everyone started out as a baby, right? Everyone had no skills when they started, right? And they grew up and they picked certain pathways in life. And they took certain steps and they got to where they are. So when you look at it, so I'm going to talk about it sort of macroscopically now. As mentioned, I do a lot of talking both nationally and internationally, and even on TV, Leslie, not as a journalist, but just presenting. So you know what I was told one time, because as a leader, you're responsible for what comes out of your mouth that everybody else is hearing, right? And you're so nervous about what's going to come out of your mouth, sometimes you freeze. But the one thing I say is always think of whoever is in the audience. One is they don't know as much as you do on the subject. And even if they do, they didn't prepare because you're the speaker, right? So you own that confidence. And you usually would pick on someone within the audience and kind of look at that person, engage with someone who is engaging with you so you don't feel as nervous. And then you can own being a leader of that particular sort of big thing. So, no amount of public speaking practice or anything will prepare you for that unless you have that self-confidence. But leadership in me started, I told you about when you started out as an intern, you're the lowest man on the totem pole. And so to become a good leader, you watch people. I really watched and looked at everyone as they're teaching, as they're leading, as they have the confidence. And I try to emulate the best person in that arena. The other thing I do is I try to take from the best of everyone else. So someone may be good at enunciating or speaking well. Another person may be good at eye contact. Another person may speak a certain way. So I try to, take from each one of those and then sort of build on that. So when you're an intern, you're listening, you're soaking up everything. As a resident, you get to speak a little bit as well. And then as chief resident, you're kind of running the show. So when you're a good leader, you want people to have confidence in you. And you always try to be honest. And if you don't know something, you admit it, right? You don't ever make something up. If you're asked something, or if you don't know something, you say, let's find out more about this together. And maybe there's someone within that team who has that answer, and you embrace them. Being a good leader is being able to embrace other people who may have the answer and bringing them on as part of that team. All right. Being a good leader inspires confidence in those around you, and they want to help and they want to be a part of the team. Being a good leader is not being someone that people are afraid to approach. And being a good leader is not someone who, is part of your team, but they don't want to speak. Being a good leader is that everyone who's part of the team, they want to speak up, they want to be a part of it, they want to engage with you, and they want to work with you. So that's something that's a learned behavior by one, observing and listening, even as a leader, to what everyone has to bring to the team. So that's what I hope I can impart to you, young men who are listening in. Anybody could be a leader. You don't have to be rich or powerful, but you can be rich and powerful. And when you do get rich and powerful, remember to keep that humble spirit within, to listen always to other people. Then that all of those help you to become a good leader.
Thank you. So, oftentimes we think that the answer isn't in the room, but when you have people whose voices are valid or validated, the answer to a solution, to a problem is in that room. And we just have, as a leader, we just have to allow that voice to be heard. One of the questions, I'm gonna check the chat for a second here, ladies. One of the questions goes to you, Silhouette Leslie. The question is, how did you feel being on national TV for the first time? And
right now I'm on local television, but I would say the first time that I was on television, it doesn't matter if it was a national audience or if it was 17 people, the feeling is still, oh, I'm on TV, and think about, how you've ever felt when somebody's put a camera up to you, and it's a different kind of a thing because it is live and it is real and there is no delay that I'm in control of. It's something, like I said, you work through and you get used to it. And I had to kind of get myself to a place where I would, instead of thinking about the people who were on the other side of the television, or the other side of the camera, I had to think about the fact that it was me, the camera, and my photographer. And so I see it that way. And that helps me to just tell the story I need to tell and get over nerves and not think about, how many people are watching. Being here at NBC Connecticut, I'll often, depending on the story, if it's relevant to New York, I'll pop up on TV in New York. And so it's like, okay, I've gone from this audience of 1 million people to 9 million people, plus the internet, which means the whole world. And anybody who, clicks on this link one day later. And I just had to think through it. Okay, you're doing a job that you know how to do, and you're just telling a story. So forget the machine that is in front of you and tell people what you know. And as a reporter, often, I'm literally, my job is to tell you what I've seen. So this building is on fire. I can see it. I'm going to describe to you exactly what is happening in front of me. Or I had this interview with this person. We talked for half an hour. I'm going to boil down the most important parts of our conversation into 90 seconds. It's a real mental exercise, but it's one of just kind of telling yourself, okay, you got this, you can do this, work through it, and quiet the noise in your mind, the distractions of, the weight of what you're doing, and just focus on the task at hand. I would imagine it's the same way in medicine. This is huge. Someone's life is literally in your hand, their future, their health is in your hands, but you have to think about the task and remain focused on that.
So Silhouette Leslie, I know we just asked Silhouette Icy about the most important thing about leadership and what type of leadership skills. But I want to switch a question on you and ask you, what challenges do you face as a leader in your field? And then we can back that over to Silhouette Icy.
I think as a journalist, I encounter challenges trying to tell the stories that I want to tell. Mm-hmm. I work in a place where I've gotten a great deal of respect and support for things like my show, Connecticut in Color, mm-hmm. but making sure that there is a platform for things like that is something that you got to work at all the time. And you have to make sure, hey, we can't miss this. We got to remain focused on these issues. A couple of years ago, everybody was talking about George Floyd, social justice. And you heard folks say, we want to make sure that this is a movement and not a moment. So making sure that all of those terms that we started talking about, diversity, understanding systemic racism, mm-hmm. inclusion, all of that, those are things that I remain focused on. And sometimes it can be a little defeating to realize that people have moved on from that stuff that, we all said we cared so much about, 2 years ago. So that's a challenge. I think being a person of color in television, sometimes there are folks who don't necessarily want to hear our voice just because of how it's packaged, like who it's coming from. And so, I've worked pretty hard at trying to make sure that I'm well respected and well regarded, particularly in a place like Connecticut, where there aren't a lot of folks who look like us on television. And I think, kind of nationally, there's become a distrust of journalism. And, a lot of folks, and this is from our own folks, from all kinds of people, they think there's an agenda. When I hear people say the media, it's like red flags for me, because it's like, there's no larger conspiracy at work here. And so sometimes even on the local level in news, I'll find that I'm kind of stonewalled by certain people because they have this belief that I'm out to get them, that there's going to be some kind of gotcha element of the work that we do. And that's not the case. So I find myself working against that sometimes. And I've got to put on all my leadership hats to work through that in those moments.
So Lacey?
Sure, I'd be happy to answer that. So first, let me just give you some stats. In the United States, the demographics is about maybe 14% African Americans, about 15 or 16% Hispanic Americans. But when you look at people in medicine, 4% of the population are any doctor, and about 2% are cardiologists. And of that, less than half are Black female cardiologists. So I'm a kind of a rarity in a sense, and sometimes that presents a challenge. So I remember one time I was invited to speak in Montreal. My name is Fergus professionally. Rowe is my married name. So it's always Dr. Fergus, which it probably sounds Irish. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. But I remember showing up to the auditorium, which was packed with about 300 people. And someone greeted me and said, "So where is Dr. Fergus?" I said, "I'm Dr. Fergus." And they kind of looked at me like, "You're Dr. Fergus?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm Dr. Fergus." So the challenge is that when you go into these, big arenas, they don't expect that you're a Black woman. And two, you have to do above and beyond what they would do, right? You got to come in packed, polished, and prepared, because they're already not necessarily expecting you to do well because you're a Black female and this is a white audience. So sometimes you have that challenge, but then again, like I always say, pick one person in the audience who was engaging with me, and then I'm able to get through. But that's on a big level. But how about even patients, right? I remember as a fellow, that's a fellow in training. So I trained at New York Hospital Cornell, which is on the Upper East Side. A lot of very affluent people come there, and you're sometimes the only person between them. And I remember one night, so the person had a cardiac cath and a stent. So you get to, basically you handle them that night with a very important, potentially life-threatening procedure if it's not done right, which is pulling out the sheath out of their groin. We don't do that much anymore, but it was me on call. I was a senior fellow that night. And I went in with my junior, who was white. The nurse was white. The patient was white. And I came into the room to do the procedure, which if I didn't do it right, you'd be dead. So you should be respectful. So the person said, when I came in, the person said, "Well, are you going to be the one in charge of this procedure?" I said, "Yes." He said, "But you don't look like a doctor." I said, "So what does a doctor look like?" And then, I don't know if I said it or somebody said, "You expect a 70-year-old white male with white hair?" I said, "Well, listen, I'm the doctor here tonight, and I'm going to be doing that procedure. So you could not have it, or I could take care of it and it could be done." And I stepped out of the room and I said, "You decide." So when I came back in, they were very apologetic, and they were like, "But we don't expect, you know what he said?" And this was intended to be nice. "You look like you could be a secretary, right? Because you're a Black female, but a doctor is quote unquote a white male with white hair." So that's some of the challenges that you face, right? People don't, they have an expectation of who should be a doctor, right? And even a speaker when you come in, so those are some of the challenges that you may face. What's really sad to me as well is that we definitely need to have more of our own entering the field of medicine. It's very sad. The enrollment is down, especially for Black males. The enrollment is down for Black males in medicine. And we understand the culture, we understand what's going on. And, you know, once you engage with these patients, they trust you. Right now, a lot of patients, when they come to me, they want to also have me help them find a Black male primary care doctor, this, that, the other, because they want people who are going to take care of them. So the challenge is, one is, you know, that their expectations. I now teach a class on what's called implicit bias. Implicit bias, where, you know, by looking at someone, you expect a certain thing. So some of my colleagues, for instance, they look at a Black patient and a Black male patient, and they may have certain preconceived notions. And so part of the challenge is educating them that you cannot just assume that, you know, someone is a certain way just by how they look. So you see a lot of that in your field, but they're always manageable. Again, you know, being able to speak about it, being able to have mentors, have people that you could talk to, be a part of the Kappa League or the Kappas, be a part of a fraternity, a sorority, a group where you could speak to, you know, different people about your experiences, and also be able to share your experiences. I think that that's very important in meeting some of these challenges head on.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I think I have Brother Phil who may want to jump in for a second here.
If I may, and my apologies, panel. I know excellent discussion, and actually you prompt a lot of other questions that I have, but I'm not going to go before the Kappa Leaguer. I do realize there was a question that he had, Kappa Leaguer Denver Boone had with regards to, I guess it's for Leslie. How were you able to get an internship in journalism when you didn't major in that field? I'm sorry, in that college? Was it difficult? So let me let you answer his question, and then I have a piggyback question after that.
I'll be very brief. So it was not a problem, because in journalism, again, it's one of those things where you don't necessarily need to be studying it in school in order to work in the career, because it's not like medicine. I don't need a certain understanding of that calculus or, you know, certain kinds of chemistry or that kind of thing, because you learn on the job. So it wasn't hard. I often will tell people, don't major in journalism if you actually want to be a journalist, because it's important to know things about the world around you, and versus just knowing how to do this job, how to write a story. I have a job where from one day to the next, I don't know what I might be talking about. And so it's very important to know at least a little bit about kind of everything. So it wasn't a challenge for me at all. And I think that most journalists that I work with across my career, some of them have degrees in journalism, many of them don't. And more we're seeing, especially at the national level, that a lot of people who are journalists, they don't even have a background like mine, where they work through the ranks in journalism. Many of the people you see on MSNBC now, they have backgrounds in politics. They worked for some elected official, or they worked for some government agency or something before they made the jump onto television. So just for me, this is not the rule, I think, for most other fields, but for what I do, you know, a degree in journalism is not necessary for a career in journalism. So that wasn't a struggle for me trying to get an internship, but I did have to be in college because I needed college credit in order to get all the internships that I had.
Oh, great. I like that. Hopefully that answers your question. Then, oh, good, you responded. And if I may, Silhouette Crusoe, can I ask just two other questions? Actually, and this is for the three of you. Obviously, I'm gonna wear the hat of a Kappa Leaguer who is in the grade between 5th grade and 12th grade for a moment, okay? And I'm quite sure they're gonna have follow-up questions, but this goes to you as well as anyone else on the call. I asked the question of how you overcome your challenges, right? Because a lot of times I've heard implicit bias, and I got to tell you, that's a discussion within itself, especially for self-identity. I would love for you to come back and talk to that, because that seems like a discussion our Kappa Leaguers would really get engaged in, because what does that look like? And I think it kind of talks to how you appear, how do you dress, what do you think of the individual? Because first impression is last impression, right? And I've always shared that with our Kappa Leaguers all the time. How you present yourself is what people will think of you. And if you were to see someone dress a certain way and they don't tell you anything about themselves, you're going to have a perception of them. I know they always say never judge a book by its cover. But my other question, my question is, you as leaders today, and for the sacrifices that you've made to achieve what you to achieve the goal that you have thus far. If you had to do something different, if you take a moment to reflect and go all the way back to even as well, in the age of capital E, let's say fifth grade through 12th grade, and if it's something that you had to do different or something that you would have loved to improve on, what would that one or two things be that you can share with our capital leaguers? And then I could start with you, um, uh, Silva Caruso, and then you can go around the table from there. What would that one thing be?
I think, you know what, if you just repeat the last part of the question.
Okay, so we all look back and have a moment of reflection, right?
Mhm.
And you say, wow, I see where I'm at today. If I had to do something different, or this one thing I had to pick up, like one thing I noticed, I was looking at the chat and they were talking about individuals who learning a second language or a third language, right? And I know, I don't know today without capital leaguers, is that a requirement in high school? But I know many moons ago, that was a big requirement. And a lot of people didn't want to take a second language or third language, but they made it a requirement. Today, it goes without saying, you need to be able to you should be able to speak multiple languages because it puts you in in a different arena. So if you had to look back today on where you have come from, what's the one thing that you would identify that you say, you know what, if I had to do something different, this is what it would be as a leader? What would that one thing be?
You know, Brother Cuso, one of the things that I was fortunate to have is my mother is part Panamanian, so she speaks Spanish fluently. She grew up speaking Spanish, French, Italian, and Patois, right? The only language that I understand maybe is broken Spanish, like go clean your room, stop the noise, those type of phrases, because I didn't engage in speaking another language. And I find myself at a deficit when I do travel to other countries to do missionary work. I always have to have a translator with me, which is, you know, unfortunate because, like Dr. Rowe had said earlier, you know, being able to speak someone's language also means that you are embracing their culture, embracing their language, and embracing, you know, just who they are. So one of the things that I wish I would have done to further myself in my work as an educator and as a missionary is to have picked up another language.
Okay. All right. Good. Next, Silva Rowe.
Sure. Hi. So what I wish that I could have done differently, when I was a fellow in training on the Upper East Side, a lot of those guys used to do day trading, but you know they learned very early about investments and managing money. And I think a lot of us as Black people, we don't learn that. We're like, okay, we're going to get the education and we're going to work and we're going to do good. But what I found out is that other people, you know, they have different approaches. They're going to do all of that, but they're going to be like, you know, how can I be really wealthy and make money? And I'm not saying that's the only thing or that you should focus on that, but that's also something that you can focus on and not be ashamed of. I was at a meeting, a very high profile meeting, an American Heart meeting. And this young white guy came up to me afterwards because he donated $50,000 to the American Heart Association, right? And I was like, okay, wow, major deal. I found out that I was the mentor for that that young man. I remember now. He said that I was walking around with the echo machine, and he was just a resident, and he was learning all about, you know, becoming a cardiologist. And he said that I influenced him, and he became a cardiologist. But I didn't have $50,000 to give to the American Heart Association. But what I'm finding out is that a lot of them, they start out very early learning about, in addition to their career, how do you invest? How do you make money? Okay. And I think that we need to instill that into our young people, that they're not just going to go and work and, you know, do a career and that's how they make their money. There are other ways of doing that. and there are other ways of getting involved. And when all those guys were doing, things like that and learning, I was like, I'm going to focus on my work and trying to get through this. And I didn't do that. And so that I could tell you that although you do very, very well, obviously, and I'm thankful, some of the people that I knew back then, they're way beyond accomplished in terms of financial stability above and beyond, because they learned and they focused on, wealth management, and at a very, very early age. And I think we need to instill that into our young people very early, along with all the other things, leadership, et cetera. That's definitely something to focus on. And being able to do it over again, I would have done that. Thank you.
I think for me, two things, as I've already mentioned, I, like Silhouette Monica, would have learned another language. And I think kind of bigger picture, and this is something that is a work in progress even now, and I'm in my late 30s, but that idea of, I say it all the time, don't tell yourself no, let them tell you no. And I cannot count the number of opportunities that I've potentially missed out on because I had some level of self-doubt. And didn't pursue things with the belief that I could do it, for fear of just being rejected, for fear of saying, oh, well, I might not get it. I might not get in. I might not win. So let me just not try. And my father has told me this forever. And I see how important it is, just trying to do things that you have an interest in, putting in an application for a job or for a scholarship or for some experience, because you just never know. And so many times I had a fear about whether I would get that thing. And so I said, let me just not try, so I won't have to deal with the disappointment of not getting it. But also on the flip side, there are things that I've tried to pursue, not thinking anything would come from it, and the next thing you know, it became reality. So you'll never know what you can accomplish until you just try. My show is a perfect example of that. I went into my bosses with this whole idea and thought I would have to do presentations and prove that there was a need for this. And my boss literally just said, yes, let's do that. Now, had I talked myself out of it, we wouldn't have the show now, but I was willing to go and go out on a limb and try and believe that I had a good idea. And so that is so important. There are going to be things that will scare you, situations, rooms that will intimidate you, job titles that will seem very big, but you can get those things. You just have to be willing to put yourself out there to try.
No, great. No, I love that. I really do. And I know I'm going over, don't worry, I'll give you the extra time. I know I'm going over on my own time, but these are questions that are just burning questions. And I don't want to take anything away from the brothers of the Silhouette. So please, I'll give you an opportunity. Actually, you can put them in the chat. May I sneak in one last question, Silhouette, Monica Cruz? And then you can take it from there.
Sure. We're just about to wrap up anyway. So I'm gonna piggyback on you right now and just, once you ask your final question for the Silhouettes to really kind of just share your final thoughts in regards to leadership for our young brothers here for the Kappa League.
Okay, well, actually, you know what? It'll tie into the same thing that you just asked. So when you give that response, I would be interested to know, as a leader, what motivates you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All yours, Martha Caruso.
When I think about my motivation is the voice of my children in my classrooms, the voice of the marginalized and oppressed students and families that I serve on a regular basis. And then when I'm in front of the room and I'm speaking to teachers, I look across, and I didn't get a chance to share this earlier. The majority of teachers throughout the United States are white women, right? And what we don't see is women of color, but more importantly, we don't see men of color who are standing in front of our students, educating them and sharing their lives and being vulnerable enough with them as they are going through the education process. So that's one challenge for me that I see as a motivation to make sure that not only do I get a chance to speak to girls of color, but men of color, young men of color, to enter the field of education. Because it is with education, do we know that a lot of things that Silhouette Icy and Silhouette Leslie just spoke about, you do need that mentor in that field in order for you to be successful and help you to gain that confidence. So with all of that, you know, you want to continue to surround yourself with those positive and purposeful people, right? Because the person who is sitting next to you is probably not smarter than you. They just may have read one more book than you have, right? And so that's what makes them just a little bit smarter because they just read one more book. And so if you can make sure that you, like Silhouette Icy just said, and I'm building with Silhouette Leslie here, just remember that relationships are the currency of life, right? And those, every time you build a relationship, you make sure that it's solid, you make sure that it's sound, because you have to manage them well in order to be successful. And that I would believe to makes a good leader. And so I'm going to pass the mic to Silhouette Icy, and then Silhouette Lizzie, you can close us out, and we'll enter into our question and answer.
So thank you. And so what motivates me is that I know that as a people of color, we really have what it takes to be the best of anything that we desire. When you look at people who have actually had the opportunity or given the challenge, and you look what they had to endure and what they had to accomplish, you know why the general majority is afraid of us as a people. And that's why, you know, we get suppressed. But when you look at people who actually are given the opportunity and they're able to fly, the sky's no limits. And everybody then has to, even if reluctantly, emulate them. Look at President Barack Obama. With all of the challenges and everything that he has had, he was one of the best presidents, if not the best, right? Given an opportunity. Look at, Oprah, all right? Given an opportunity, she rose from poverty and rape and all of this to being one of the best journalists, producers ever, okay? Colin Powell, you know, he came from the South Bronx. He had nothing, but given the opportunity, he rose to one of the top generals ever, right? When you look at anyone who's given the opportunity, they can do it. So what I know is that we are intelligent, we're smart, we have athletic capabilities. We can really do anything we can do and be the best at it. And that's what motivates me. Looking at sports that nobody ever thought that we could do, golf, Tiger Woods, he was at the best of his game. Look at tennis, Serena and Venus Williams, given the opportunity, they're the best of their game. So you could use this example over and over and over again. Sitting here in this Kappa League group, you may have the next biggest and best entrepreneur, the biggest hockey league player, even football. We were always taught that Blacks couldn't be a running back because they weren't smart enough. Look at what's happening now. Every sport we dominate. Business we're dominating. Medicine we're dominating. Did you know that the bypass machine and the bypass lung machine was invented by a Black man who couldn't even go through the front door of the university? You ever saw the movie Something the Lord Must Have Made? He came up with that. And that's one of the biggest things that we've ever done. So again, given the opportunity, we can rise to the very top. All right. So that's what motivates me, knowing that we have young geniuses, young businessmen, young politicians, future presidents, all of that sitting right here. And we just have to cultivate it. So my message to you, Kappa Leaguers, is if you can dream it, you can achieve it. Don't let anybody tell you no, because all those people who are where they are, they started off where you are right now as a student, aspiring to be bigger and better. So, and I'll tell you what, always reach for the stars. Never sell yourself short. Never doubt yourself. If you reach for the highest potential, and even if you don't make it, right, you'll reach a potential. But if you aspire lower, then you're going to be lower. So don't let anybody tell you no. And don't let, if somebody's telling you no, and that's not the answer you want to hear, there's always Uncle Phil or Uncle Pierre or somebody else in the Kappa League or Auntie Monica, Auntie Leslie, someone who can help to guide you and to get your confidence on. Your parents. I know sometimes as young people, y'all don't want to hear what your parents have to say sometimes, but there are pearls in there sometimes, but you also have the village. So if you can dream it, you achieve it. Don't let anybody tell you no. Don't let anybody sell you short, because you can do it. So that's my message to you all. Thank you.
I think for me, leadership and what motivates me is to be an example. and to lead by being an example. I can't tell you how many people have come up to me in the time that I've lived here and been on television here in Connecticut and said, I'm just so happy to see you. I'm so happy that you're representing for us. And that means more to me than any award that I could ever win or any kind of accolade or any salary that I could draw, that people feel that they are represented because they see me. And I am a firm believer, and my primary goal is to be a credit to my family and to my race, and, you know, to be an example for other young Black women, Black men, people of color, to believe that they can accomplish what it is that they want to be, what they want to do, because they've seen someone else do it. And so I'm a firm believer that anything that you try to do, you want to do it well, and recognize that there are people who are looking at you. And so my motivation is always, and it's the reason I said yes to being a part of this today, is that, you know, I want somebody to believe that they can have what they seek out because they see someone else who looks like them doing it. And so I take that to every story that I tell, every assignment that I have, every difficult day that I experience doing this job and pursuing this career, the belief that someone else can believe that they're capable of their dreams because they've seen me do it. And so that's how I define leadership, and it's what motivates me.
Thank you, Silhouette. Thank you for your time and your effort coming to share this space and time with our young Kappa brothers. I am going to open the floor for some questions and answers from our Kappa leaders, and they are welcome to pop one and ask their question directly without having to put it in the chat. Anyone want to come on and just ask a question to myself, Silhouette Icy, Silhouette Leslie? You're welcome to do so. And if not, we're going to turn it back over to Brother Phil.
Well, I know there has to be someone. My Kappa Leaguers are very quiet here today, so there has to be someone. Who's going to be the first? Oh boy, they're quiet here today. That means you guys have done an excellent job.
Brother Schuler, Brother Oscar here.
Yeah, I was going to defer to you. I was waiting. Go ahead, Brother Paul.
All right, I have to be off camera right now, but I just want to say great job on the Silhouettes. It's good to see Silhouette Leslie. I know her husband very well. We went. You know, I was part of his undergraduate process, put it that way. I got to see him. Went to Kappa. Great man. I love Brother. I just want to say hello. And I actually met her at one of the galas they had a while back. So good to see you. Thanks to all the Silhouettes. Young Kappa Leaguers, keep achieving. And it's great to see Brother Schuler and the team doing a great job.
Great to see you.
Thank you, Brother Paul Mark. You do have some questions there, Silhouette Crusoe.
I see one question from Alex. It says, what did you see was different through the pandemic? And so, Alex, I'm going to ask you to pop one and open your mic and let us know a little bit further. Expand that question just for us so we can have a better idea of what your thought is. What did you see that was different throughout the pandemic? And if you're talking about medication, if you're talking about education, if you're talking about news, we need to know.
Like in the medical field, like what did you see that was like different?
Oh yeah, quite a few things. Unfortunately, many people lost their lives who probably would not have lost their lives. You know, we had a very, very steep rise in that with a condition that we didn't understand that much initially. So people were trying a lot of different things initially till we found out how to battle that. And I think one of the most disturbing things I saw are young people who got infected There's a condition that affects young people between age 3 and 18 that can really damage their heart, and they have residual, things. But on a positive note, a lot of doctors themselves were nervous and afraid of going out and taking care of people. So that's when we learned about virtual visits and telehealth. So we started doing video visits, right? So just like I can see you and talk to you now, you can see and talk to patients from their home. And you can order things, medications that they could pick up, and even blood work and tests. So that was one of the biggest things that changed for me in my practice, where before everybody had to come in to see the doctor. Now there are times you still have to come in, but you can do 70% of things via the video visit. I know that made a really big difference. You can look at someone sometimes and just see that they're ill, and by how their appearance and how they're breathing and how they're talking. So you don't have to put a stethoscope on their chest to figure that out. So that was one of the bigger changes, is being able to manage people without being right next to them, to do that in terms of helping them to feel better. So I don't know if that answers your question, but those were the two major things that I saw during the pandemic that was different.
Alex, did she answer your question, or did you need a little bit more?
Yeah, she answered my question.
Thank you. And I see Xavier, you have a question. Did you have any family or friends that didn't believe in you? And I'm wondering if you were asking the entire panel, or you're asking a particular panelist. So you can pop on and ask your question.
I was asking for all of you, all three.
Okay.
I'll answer.
Go ahead.
I was pretty lucky in that, if I had family members that didn't believe in me, they never would have said it. My parents, even to this day, remain incredibly supportive of my choice to work in television and to pursue this career and to do whatever I have to do to make it in the way that I wish to. And I think that's been really important. But I would say to anyone who has, naysayers, you've got to just learn early how to tune that out. And it may come from within your family. It may come from within your friends. It may come from within school. And you just have to recognize what you have within you, see what your goals are, and say, I am determined that I will do this and be successful. Because even if it's not your family, there's always going to be somebody who is going to look at you and say, you don't look like the doctor. I don't want you in this role that you want. And you have to learn how to work past them so that you can get what you want, and recognize that you are going somewhere. And your job, as my dad always says, is to put them in your rear view, get past them and make it happen.
And I think sometimes that is where you get that opportunity to educate as you move along, right? So I have to educate my family members that, I'm going to be safe making this mission trip. I'm going to do everything that I need to do in order to leave things in good standing when I leave. And when I come back, we'll talk about my trip and educate them just a little bit more so that they feel just a little bit more confident and safe about what I'm about to do and what I am going to do. And I think that's where, so what Icy was talking about, there's that implicit bias that when you go and you're doing something, you think that someone can't do it just because of the way they look, the way they dress, or, it's something that they've never experienced before. That's also implicit bias, right? So it's up to you to educate, and that you become that leader in your family on that particular topic.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And even if it doesn't come from within your family, it may come from friends, or, believe it or not, unfortunately, it may come from advisors, depending on who they are in school. Because I remembered when I was a valedictorian in my school, and I was looking at schools like MIT and really high level schools, and my guidance counselor says, don't apply to MIT, you're not going to get into it. Mm-hmm. And there have been other examples. People have told me that their teachers said, or their guidance counselor, don't do that because you're not going to get into it. Listen, as both Leslie and Monica said, there are other people you could talk to. And even if it's within school, that sometimes, of course, that's a major influence on you. If you believe in it, and I keep telling you all over again and again, if you dream it, you can achieve it. If you believe it, it can be done. If you're getting an answer that you think it's not right and someone's trying to dissuade you, don't give up. Just ask around. There will be someone who can help you and someone who can guide you. And if that's what you want to do, you go for it. Because again, if any people else have achieved it, it can be done, right? And so if that's what you want to do, go for it. I was told that as a cardiologist, I can't have a family as a female, because you'll be too busy and you're doing this, that, and the other. We have 3 children. I'm married and I'm doing all of that. So again, I just saw that as a possibility that I wanted to do. And I, just kind of sought the help, believed in myself. There's always prayer as well, just praying and believing that you're here for a divine reason and that it's going to be done. And, again, you can do it. Think about it, go for it, and you get it done.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I see just one more question. I don't know, Brother Phil, I see a question from Silhouette Francesca. She's asking, are there any Kappa Leaguers looking to go into any of the leadership roles presented today? And I guess the Kappa Leaguers can drop that in the chat. And as they do, we will look at them as we turn the mic back over to Brother Phil. I just want to say, Silhouette, thank you for taking your time and being here today. I learned a lot myself. I'm pretty sure some of our leaders did learn a lot as well. And so I'm looking forward to spending this time with you again in other spaces and places. And I hope that you all receive your little gift. Please do let me know as I ask, and I will definitely post that.
Or maybe they could all put in the chat, what is it that they want to do in the future? Just type it in the chat. What do you want to do? What do you want to be when you, 10 years, 15 years from now, what do you want to be? Type it in the chat.
If anyone has a question about a career in TV, I have my social media handle there. I'm reachable that way on all the platforms. So feel free if you have a question ever, today, tomorrow, 2 years from now, I'll be available to help if you need it.
Same here. If you all desire a career in medicine, the health fields, anything like that, I'm here.
And
well, I'll be here anyway.
If you look for a job in education, that would be the place to go for young men who want to inspire other young men. As we are in this pandemic, we need to come out with some strong Black men in charge. So please reach out. We are really lacking in the field of education now, especially in special education.
Great. All right, I see that they're putting them in the chat, which is great. While they're doing that, I'm gonna do a couple of things before everyone signs off. I'm gonna first want to thank you. What a dynamic panel. I have enjoyed the dialogue, enjoyed the discussion, the feedback, very insightful as leaders. I know our production crew is working in the background, so I know if he can just hit pause on the recording, because then we're going to have some discussion points that we don't want everyone to be live on. So if he can do that for me, that would be great. And then what I like to do is definitely thank our silhouettes for really